Biden did take a victory lap today on his not yet passed bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Yesterday, the United States Senate took the additional step toward passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Historic investment in roads and rail and transit and bridges and clean energy and clean water. It will enable us not only to build back, but to build back better.
Oh, boy. Right now, there are 17 Republican senators who want to build back better with him. And that bill could have been passed last night, but my next guest held the line. Joining me now is Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty, who blocked the Democrats from ramming it through. It is an honor to see you here tonight, sir. We know that you blocked that after it was found that, in fact, it was not paid for. That was a big selling point that was shattered to the tune of about $250 billion, 2,700 pages. Some people have said, oh, they read it. No, nobody's read this thing. Why have so many of your colleagues jumped onto that ship? And why were you the only one who said enough is enough and you held the line in this regard?
Well, Tammy, every one of my colleagues is going to have to make their own decision. It's a matter of conscience. But one thing that's clear, this thing was advertised to be paid for. And as you said, a very complex bill, over 2,700 pages. To put it into context, the King James Bible is a little over 1,300 pages. Massive bill. And when they fell short, over $250 billion, this was just announced a few hours before Chuck Schumer tried to expedite this through and pass it in the middle of the night last night. I wasn't going to stand for that. The American public needs to understand what we're looking at. My colleagues, I think, need a closer look at what we're looking at, and particularly with a budget shortfall of $250 billion, we're going to park that much more debt, that much more inflation on our economy and on our children and grandchildren.
You know, what's interesting, a lot of people might not know, is that what they wanted to do required every single senator to say yes. And that is appropriate, right? There's 100 people, 100 of you, the greatest country on earth, just, you know, a few hundred, you know, very few people have ever held those positions. And you said no, one person saying no, and it had to be you. And I guess people are probably upset at this point. Well, but what do we say, and how do you feel about your party? Because this is another frustration that Americans feel when this is exactly the kind of thing we didn't want. But bills being passed without knowing what was in them, without knowing the cost, as though they just don't care and it's time for summer recess. Is that still the prevailing attitude even after 4 years of Donald Trump?
Well, Tammy, I can assure you that it's not the attitude with me. And the people of Tennessee didn't elect me to be popular in the Senate. They didn't elect me to make things convenient for Chuck Schumer. They elected me to represent their best interest and to represent the best interest of the taxpayers of America. And when something like this occurs, when a complex bill like this passes not through normal order, not through committees, but through a different process altogether, we've not had enough time to review it. They initially tried to pass it through with no text whatsoever.
I remember.
Then, yes, that's right.
It was like the blank book, the empty book, but buy it, even though there's nothing on the page.
Indeed. And then it turns out that we can't pay for it. And we find this out just hours before there's an accelerated process that Chuck Schumer again is trying to set up. But the bigger concern is that Chuck Schumer is trying to accelerate this through last night in the dark of night to put the big deficit shortfall in the rearview mirror so it can move right into the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package, which is not really infrastructure, it's the Green New Deal renamed. Right. That's going to bring, you know, more taxes, it's going to destroy the fossil fuel industry, it's going to be more Obamacare, it's going to push more American jobs overseas, and it's going to make China laugh again all the way to the bank. That's my greatest concern, and we're moving right into that, and the last thing I want to do is accelerate that process for Chuck Schumer.
Well, good for you, sir. Good for you. And again, while things might be going off the cliff, it's important when you stand up, and it's vitally important to do what you've been doing. And I thank you, and I know our viewers also thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator.